Opponents of the bill, comprising largely of the young generation, are still rallying to pour on the streets today to denounce, among others, the contents of the bill, but governance altogether, with the call Ruto must go. Now, the Gen Z, who are largely credited for piling pressure for the bill to be dropped, have declined an invitation to be part of the National Multi-Sectoral Forum meant to address the concerns that they have raised. And this comes even as a section of civil society dismiss Ruto's call for dialogue, saying the president knows what to do to quell the public anger. This is in response to the formation of that multi-sectoral forum. So in studio with us as we take a look at what's happening in the country this morning, we have Nadine Kagai, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, as well as Anthony Ngero, who is the head of communications research at the UDA party. We'll also be joined shortly by economist Ruth Kinyanjui. We'd like to hear from you as well as we have this conversation. Do let us know where you are watching us from. The hashtag is New Dawn. What is the situation where you are as well? Are you taking part in the protests? Are you not? And why? The hashtag is New Dawn. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for being with us here today as we take a look at what's happening in the country. Anthony, I'd like to begin with you and President William Ruto's call for the formation of a national multi-sectoral forum that has essentially been turned down by the Gen Z, so to speak. What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, let me start by giving a lot of props to the people who have come out to protest, because just like I was telling Nordin here, the protest is majorly organic, and it kind of reminds me of the apartheid rising by the youth from the 1960s to the 1990s. And the president has come out clearly, and he has offered himself up for dialogue. He has even offered himself up to participate in some of the space discussions on X. I feel like it's high time now that we sit down. We look at some of the priorities that the youth are setting out there, so that we can find a clear way in the current conundrum that we have. I feel like the dialogue is a great opportunity, because even from the interview that the president had on Sunday, it's a great opportunity to understand the Gen Zs in depth, and some of the areas that they would like to be highlighted. Of course, the government is doing a lot to support the youth. Most of the issues that have emanated from them is, of course, unemployment, and the government is doing a lot in terms of that. Of course, we have the digital hubs that are being set up in every ward, which in the long run are supposed to employ more than 1 million of our youth within 5 years. And over the past 1 year, we have seen more than 169,000 youths being employed through the government support of the digital economy. So apart from that, it would be a good juncture for the government to understand the youth in depth. And even taking an example of myself, I was let me say, a Gen Z at some point, within that age bracket. And at that point, I was a student leader. We also did the same things that they did. So whatever they're doing, there are things that we can relate with. And I feel like it's a great opportunity for the government to hear out what the youth have to say.
Right.
Yes.
And then a list of demands has been made, Nurdin, as to what the youth want. And part of those demands was that they want the IEBC fully constituted so they can immediately begin the process of recalling their members of parliament. And we'll be getting to the wrath that members of parliament have been receiving. Now, President William Ruto has actually spoken to that and promised, new IEBC commissioners in 10 days. What are your thoughts on that?
You see, the problem we have is that we're a country that is unique in that in each and every crisis we form a committee. A crisis between Uhuru and Raila, BBI. A crisis between Raila and Ruto, NADCO. a crisis between the youth and the president. This is
National
national
forum.
committee. And this is why they've said no. Because if you look at the proposal of the things he wanted to discuss, for example, jobs, corruption, accountability, most of those things, you should just find his manifesto and work on them. All right? Because those are things that when he was campaigning, he mentioned he would work on, like jobs, make that happen. He said he's already looking for jobs outside there, and he's helping Kenyans get jobs here. But they're saying that's not enough, that's not what we want. So go back to the drawing board, ask yourself, what did I promise, how do I achieve them? It's as simple as that. Now, there are issues like, for example, the national debt. This is the biggest cancer we have, because we do believe that we need to have an audit of our national debt. What are we owed? What are we paid? What is pending? What is, because we have talks of allegations of odious debt. What is this odious debt that we have? You know, so if we have that, then we can move forward as a country. But they have told him to come where they are. That is on social media. And he has said he'll come on X, where there are those who would feel it's better if he goes to TikTok. I do believe that as a country, we have come of age, where people are now asking questions and accountability. When you talk about IBC, why don't you have an IBC until today? Because the leaders that we have in this country wanted to have an IBC where they will propose names. They will have their own people. And that's the reason for NADCO, if you look at it. Because the law they changed before the elections, 2022, if we followed that law, the president would have had an easy hand. And they felt that it would have made him have more options as to, you know, there's this suspicion, because he would have put up an IBC that will help him win in 2027. So that is why Raila and his team back then were saying no appointment of IBC commissioners.
How implementable is that 10-day timeline that the president gave on Sunday? So we're looking at 7 days now.
It's not, because one, you need to have interviews and everything. So 10 days, we have not interviewed anyone, to the best of my knowledge. We were meant to. There was a gazettement of those who were meant to chair those interviews. It has never happened. So are we going to handpick people courtesy of what method will we use? So 10 days is neither here nor there. It might be just more or less like another promise, which will backfire. So I do believe that we do need a functional IBC. Yes, we do have the secretariat, but the commissioners are not there. So we find ourselves in a situation where there are those Kenyans who lost MCAs are not being represented because there are no by-elections done. The members of parliament who have lost their seats courtesy of petitions, those people who are meant to be presented in parliament don't have a representative. So we are stifling representation at the same time. So I do believe we do need to have an IBC as soon as possible, so that even away from recalling members of parliament, those who are not being represented need to be represented. And also, we need to plan the next elections. This issue of planning an election 3 months to the election is the reason why we have a Cherera for every other time.
Right. Anthony, do you agree? Because what Nurdin says is what the civil society said in a press address yesterday, that many of the issues raised by the youth did not require policy dialogue, but decisive executive action. And essentially, these are things that the government or President William Ruto can pronounce himself on. What are your thoughts on when Nurdin says we have a committee and a report for every crisis, but how far has the NADCO report gone in terms of implementation? Do you agree that this needs decisive executive action?
Yes, I do agree that it needs decisive executive action, because for every decision that the government makes, it has to be anchored to some sort of policy so that the execution may be in the best way that it can. And of course, we are also looking for posterity in any kind of decision that the government makes. And I'd really want to chime in on the issue of IEBC.
Right.
We know very well that there has been an IEBC amendment that was proposed in Parliament. It was subject to public participation a few months back, and people had the opportunity to share their views on how well we can establish the IEBC so that we don't find ourselves in the kind of situation that we had 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. So by saying that whatever the president said is not plausible. I think that is very inaccurate, because this is a process that has been going on in the back end, and we all had the opportunity to give our views according to Article 118 of the Constitution, which gives us that leeway to participate in public participation when we are coming up with such such decisions. So I feel like it is very important for all these things to be anchored under a policy, because that is the best way we can even be accountable to ourselves. We can call ourselves out. We can say we made X and Y decisions. How are we far in terms of implementation? Where do we have challenges? Where do we need to to adjust so that it can be well received by the people?
All right.
Yeah.
Nurdin, the front page of the Standard newspaper there says Ruto is between a rock and a hard place. We have the youth occupying everywhere today in honor of their fallen comrades and to put pressure on the government on matters governance. Now, many of those who have pledged to come out in the streets today say they are doing so because of fueled rage by, among others, President William Ruto's emphasis or statement, or President William Ruto's lack of empathy during that Sunday night interview with regard to the deaths and the injured. What are your thoughts on the President's handling of the deaths in this anti-tax protest?
First and foremost, I do believe from the first day, he made serious blunders from the terminologies he used, be it terrorists, be it treasoners, be it criminals. You know, a president of the republic is a symbol of national unity. We're in a crisis. And that is why on Sunday, I was a little bit disturbed because he came out as if he lacked empathy. We have mothers who have lost children. We have families who have lost parents, you know. Kenya National Commission of Human Rights is telling us 39 people are dead, 361 are injured. That is alarming, because even losing a single person is crazy in itself. So I do believe that he has, in a way, he has fueled the rage, and that is why those who are saying, first and foremost, condolences to everyone who has lost a loved one. That is why those are saying, on Sunday they were lighting candles in Nairobi, out of nowhere. It wasn't even planned, right? That's the organic he's talking about, you know. And we find ourselves in a situation where people are angry, and he came off as if he was pro-property as opposed to pro-life. And that is the saddest part. Maybe he didn't want it to come out, but that's how he came out. And I do believe, and it looked as if he didn't even have facts as to the number of people who were dead. So it begs the question, the intelligence reports he gets. You know, there were blunders, like the 12-year-old who was shot 8 times. To him, he thought the person was alive. That child was alive. So it screamed out of touch, which is bad for a leader, more so for a president. So I do believe, one, a shake-up is needed around him. Whoever advises him is probably a ghost worker or a ghost workers, because they are out of touch with the reality. People are angry, the fact that away from the things that they want, people are angry that lives are being lost, and nothing is being done about that. Nothing is being said about that. It was more or less like a congratulations to the police for how they handled the protesters. And so I do believe that moving forward, because today is another protest day, I hope we don't lose anyone across the country. Forget even losing anyone. I hope we don't even have someone who's injured. When people are peacefully demonstrating, and that's what the court has said, people are peacefully demonstrating. There's no need for water cannons. There's no need for those rungus. There's no need for tear gas, rubber bullets, or live bullets. Preserve the rights of these people, so long as they do not infringe on the rights of others.
Right.
And that is what the law says.
Anthony, all eyes then today will be on President William Ruto, but also on the police in the manner with which they handle this demonstration. Ruto actually promised on national TV that the security officers would protect the protesters, exercising their democratic right. And he did still refer to the criminal elements and that police will be there to crack down on those. But what are your thoughts about what is fueling today's protests, largely in honor of those who lost their lives, but also largely because of what people perceive as the president's lack of empathy for the lives lost?
First of all, Michelle, I'd like to condole with the families who lost their loved ones in the protest, and also sympathize with those who were injured and the families, because we know very well those are projected, they have to spend in terms of seeking medical attention for those who are injured. And the president was very clear. The mandate of the police in each protest is to protect the protesters. And in every story, we can choose to look at it the way we want to. However, there are always two sides of the story. Of course, when we saw the protests going on, we saw most of the police restraining themselves from attacking the protesters. However, there are a few incidences where we saw protesters trying to intimidate the police. And even you as a person, when you are trying to be a little bit, you want to go overboard with whatever you want to do, it calls for some sort of action. And of course, when the president was making his speech on after the protest, the first thing that he did was acknowledge the protesters, and he acknowledged how they came out and the way it was tribeless and they were issue-based. However, there are a few instances, and that's the reason why he used the term treason. It's such a huge word, and we are talking about investing a lot of our resources in renovating parliament, in renovating State House, in renovating the House of the DP. Right. But let's look at what happened to parliament. Those are our own taxes that will be used to repair parliament. And when you talk about the people who were killed in the protest, it is important to get our facts clear, because it is very dangerous to come on national television and speak of unverified data, because for instance, there was the huge conversation that was on last week on Tuesday, that there was a massacre in Githurai, which was very, very inaccurate. So I feel like it is important, even as we share all these statistics, they have to be evidence-based and they have to be accurate.
All right, I'll just take a break here on New Dawn as we take a look at what's happening in the country, even as Gen Z stage another round of protests, not just in the Nairobi Central Business District, but across the country, what they term Occupy Everywhere. And we'll be taking a look at what's happening in the Nairobi Central Business District and other parts of the country as well. This even as a section of Kenyans dismissed the call for dialogue, saying they want action of a dialogue. Do you agree? Speak to us. The hashtag is New Dawn. Much more coming up after the break.